What's good? It's your boy Fanon. As we know, Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin had been canceled because Canelo Alvarez pulled out yesterday, and De La Hoya gave a big long, violin, pulled the violins out, did a speech, and so we know for sure now that the bout is not going to happen on May 5th. Now, what I think is going to happen, Canelo Alvarez says some things that I think are interesting. And of course, De La Hoya pulled out, like I said, he pulled out his harp for how Canelo Alvarez, really doesn't deserve this. He's the best example ever of anybody in boxing, and he's known him since he was blah, blah, blah. But I'll go into all of that. Now, before I say that, let it be known, man, that I am a Canelo Alvarez fan. I've said this pretty much. I've made a bunch of videos on Canelo Alvarez. I think Canelo Alvarez is an excellent fighter. I thought that Canelo Alvarez won the first fight with Gennady Golovkin, and I was very disappointed when the news came out that he tested positive, because I was looking forward to seeing him beat Gennady Golovkin and take them belts up off of him, and then us being able to move forward and see some of the other middleweight, up and coming middleweights like Danny Jacobs and Jamal Charlo, Billy Joe Saunders. 160 is a very, very packed division, man. So I was very much looking forward to Canelo getting into a situation where I could see him. And I'm telling you, Canelo's one of my favorite fighters to watch. I love how this dude fights. But he deserved the suspension, without a doubt. I mean, I've done videos on the rules related to it and the fact that it doesn't matter whether or not he did it intentionally or not. The fact that he allowed it to enter into a system, and it would just be a very bad look if the Nevada State Athletic Commission did not give him some sort of suspension, some type of penalty, and let it be known that even, that happening, it can't be accepted. Because if he allowed him and just off the hook for that with nothing, then people could use Clenbuterol and Mexican meat and use a performance enhancing drug as a mask, as a masking agent for itself, right? So I think that penalty, it needed to happen. And what the penalty was is kind of severe, but I don't think. Reading an article that came out by the boxing scene today, and guy Keith Idec did, I agree with what he thinks is going to happen. I think that his point is very solid, and I'll go over that. Also, Canelo Alvarez also talked about Gennady Golovkin trying to talk himself out of the fight. I'll cover that, but I don't think that's the case, and I definitely am not buying what Oscar De La Hoya is saying. Now, but that said, please hit the bell icon. I'm going to do a live stream later today. The best way to know the live stream is to hit the bell icon. Subscribe and hit the bell icon and get the notifications, because it's good to do these videos and talk about it, right? But it's much more enjoyable on the live streams to have real-time conversation where you can, if you think that what I say is completely ridiculous, you can tell me right on the live stream that what I say is ridiculous. And if you agree, you can add to it. If you got any questions you want to ask to myself or any of the other people in the live stream, you can do so. And our live streams specifically have a lot of very knowledgeable, very mature boxing fans in them, and so I think that you'll enjoy, and I hope you accept my invitation to attend. Now, let me go into this article by Keith Idec. Canelo. This is Canelo saying, Golovkin is making excuses. He sounds scared to fight me. Canelo Alvarez heard and read every derogatory thing Gennady Golovkin said about him a couple weeks ago. The besmirched former two-division champion claims he didn't pay it much mind. However, Golovkin feels about Alvarez twice testing positive for a banned substance. Alvarez insists he hasn't let anything of Golovkin's criticism bother him. Golovkin was uncharacteristically critical of Alvarez for his performance-enhancing drug ordeal. Among other things, Golovkin charged that Alvarez isn't telling the truth about the contaminated meat being responsible for 2 failed voluntary anti-doping association tests for clenbuterol. After announcing his withdrawal Tuesday from their May 5th welterweight championship rematch, Alvarez fired back at the Kazakh knockout artist by contending Golovkin is using this clenbuterol controversy as a way out of their second bout. They were supposed to fight 4 weeks from Sunday night for Golovkin's IBF, IBO, WBA, and WBO welterweight titles at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. To be honest, what Golovkin or his team says doesn't bother me at all, Alvarez said through a translator during a press conference in Los Angeles. Because, number one, they're not doctors. They're not experts. I don't pay attention to them. It sounds more to me like an excuse for not wanting to fight me. Like he's scared, to be honest. Mexico's Alvarez did not elaborate on why Golovkin would not want to take part in a lucrative pay-per-view rematch that would have paid him 8 figures. Alvarez also didn't explain why Golovkin would be scared to fight him when they've already gone for it. They've already gone at it for 12 rounds, and Alvarez didn't appear to hurt Golovkin during a fight that resulted in a controversial draw September 16th at T-Mobile Arena. Nonetheless, Alvarez made it clear that Golovkin is the only opponent he wants to face once the Nevada State Athletic Commission clears him to return from his suspension. Alvarez's hearing with the Nevada State Athletic Commission is scheduled for April 18th in Las Vegas. The commission is expected to extend his temporary suspension to at least 6 months. If he were suspended for 6 months, it would be retroactive to the date of his first failed test, February 17th. That would allow Alvarez to reschedule his match with Golovkin for September 15th. Alvarez, 27, couldn't specifically discuss when he wants to fight Golovkin because his hearing hasn't taken place. Absolutely, that's the fight that I want, Alvarez said. That's the fight that I want to give fans. This is that fight. And as soon as we get the green light, that is the fight that I'll go for. The 35-year-old Golovkin, meanwhile, reinstated in a statement Tuesday that he still wants to fight May 5th in Las Vegas. Former WBA 154-pound champion Demetrius Andrade, IBF mandatory challenger Sergey Derevchenko, and Gary Spike O'Sullivan are among Golovkin's potential replacements for Alvarez. Now, as far as what Canelo, Oscar De La Hoya's, oh my God, man. Oscar De La Hoya says, thank you everybody for being here, and thank you, Canelo, for your honest words and sincerity. I know that there have been many questions and speculations about Canelo and the events of the last couple weeks. Today, I want to speak to Canelo's character and how he is different from the vast majority of boxers I have seen in more than 25 years in this business. I can assure you that both inside and outside the ring, Canelo has always displayed a professionalism and commitment that is too often absent in our sports. I have known Canelo since he was a teenager. Even then, he worked hard, handled himself with grace and class, and showed the utmost respect for the sport. Over the years, while some of his peers have acted foolishly and without regard or respect from the sport, pause, like putting on stockings, like dressing in drag and getting taken from the back by prostitutes, like that. Anyway, Canelo has repeatedly shown that he's the consummate gentleman and has gone to where he is today as a fighter through dedication, focus, and hard work. Quite simply, he is the model for what we want the best of our sport to be. I know my description of Canelo's character matches what you've all seen from him over the years as well. I sincerely hope that given his unblemished record for never having tested positive in more than 90 tests in and out of competition with more than 52 professional fights, you would be willing to give Canelo fair consideration. No, Oscar. All you got to do is test once, dog. And, hey, how many times did Lance Armstrong test positive, man? in and out of contest. It's not the ones that you pass the problem, man. It's the one that he failed, Oscar. It's the one that he failed. And he failed too. So I don't know. I have no doubt that Canelo Alvarez is extremely hardworking. I have no doubt that he's extremely dedicated and extremely professional. If it was true that he had intentionally had taken computerol, I would still say the same thing. That he would be working hard, that he would be professional, that he carries himself outside of the ring as a gentleman. It's just that he cheats. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. You can't just pump computerol into your veins, sit on the couch and eat donuts. You still gotta train. You still gotta work hard. You still have to help sell the fights. You still gotta conduct yourself and aside from boxing, you should conduct yourself as a professional. Right? Be a good reflection on boxing. Like not having pictures of you as a drag queen flashed all over the place. But, that's you, Oscar. That's you. That's not Canelo. Can't hold Canelo guilty for that, right? Anyway, that's why I can't stand Oscar De La Hoya. That I will freely admit. I don't like Oscar De La Hoya. He talks out of both. He's not as bad as some other promoters and as far as just bold-faced telling stories, but there's just other aspects of the way that he carries himself and the issues that took place around the PBC and the fight cards that he puts on being like one decent fight and 4 shams that I don't like about him as a promoter. But I will tell you, I don't think that he's an out-and-out pathological liar like Eddie Hearn is. Or not even Bob Arum. I don't think Bob Arum is a pathological liar. He'll just lie when he needs to. Eddie Hearn just lies like he loves it. Like, hey, man, it's 5 o'clock today. I gotta come up with another lie to tell. That seems like Eddie Hearn. So, quite honestly, of my least favorite promoters, Bob Arum was at the top, followed by Oscar De La Hoya. And then I didn't know Eddie Hearn. But Eddie Hearn quickly became vying for the number one least favorite promoter in the game, right next to Bob Arum. And right about now, I think he might be, he's heading towards edging him out. But no, Bob's probably still at the top. But I do like Canelo Alvarez. I think he's a terrific fighter. I enjoy watching his fights. I've always wished that he wasn't with Golden Boy Promotion so that he wouldn't be holding up that whole organization on his back, because pretty much he's the only real fighter that they have. And it was unfortunate that he tested positive for computerol and all this stuff is going on, because it distracted from the nonsense that was going on in the camp of Gennady Golovkin, which in my opinion I dislike just as much. I don't find it any less. I don't like the fact that Canelo Alvarez tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs, and that's one thing that's wrong with the sport. You got a whole bunch of people running around here acting as if fighters are just, by the nature of evolution, then over the course of 10 to 15 years, that the human body structure has shifted so much that people are so much bigger, so much faster, so much stronger. They don't get tired. But it's just, that's just how everything works. People just get bigger, faster, stronger, and have more endurance than they did 20 years ago. And then I guess, that the state of California will be floating off and becoming its own independent island in the next 10 years as well. You know what I mean? Like, continents move, right? Continents move, they break up. And, pieces of land that were connected move out into the sea. And I'm sure that'll happen with the state of California along that fault line in the next 20 years, right? That makes just about as much sense as saying that human beings are bigger than they were, faster than they were, stronger than they were, smarter than they were, got more endurance than they were, have a better sense of focus than they did 15, 20 years ago. It's just not how it works. So yeah, and the danger associated with performance enhancing drugs and all that, I think is a terrible thing. But one of the biggest shames of it for me is that all that nonsense that Abel Sanchez was talking about how black fighters can't sell and how that style is boring and how, people don't want to see that, and how, he basically has a bunch of fighters that he trains to put into the ring and get punched in the head without any regard for their safety, so that they can entertain the hungry, so that they can entertain the bloodthirst of the masses. You know what I mean? Like, they're both terrible. But it just so happens that right when the heat was on about that subject with Abel Sanchez, all that got swept up underneath the rug because of Canelo Alvarez testing positive for Clenbuterol twice. Back-to-back weeks, though. Back-to-back weeks. But twice. Now, what's going to happen to the fight? I think when this stuff first came out and the WBC and the WBA first started talking about it, and saying that they had full support behind Canelo Alvarez, and that they knew that he was innocent and he was, he's a good guy, basically giving that same speech that Oscar De La Hoya gave. People rightfully were up in arms about the fact that, look, man, you can't have the WBA suspending Luis Ortiz for 2 years out of their rankings, but then say that, Canelo Alvarez, without any type of investigation, is you just declare him innocent, right? That's clearly a different set of circumstances. You know what I mean? That's entirely a different approach to Luis Ortiz than it was taken to Canelo Alvarez. So the outrage was justified in my estimation. But now that they come out with it, we see that it really might not be that much of an. It's really, if what Keith Idec is saying, and I have a suspicion. I read the policies on it, on the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Well, the procedures and the rules related to that, and how it's adjudicated, and what needs, the time frames, the punishment time frames. Now, I didn't see anything in there that addressed them, giving him, a shorter amount of time where they might, because it says at least 9 months, not more than 23 months. Where if it's a first offense and they're cooperative, that they might have precedents set there where it allows them to reduce it to 6 months, but then reduce it to 6 months and give him credit for time served back to February from the time of the first test. That seems to me like, yeah, man, they're going to, if what Keith Idec is saying, it's like, all right, what we kind of thought at the beginning is true, that they're going to wind up pushing this fight back for a few months, up until the next big money date, because there's 2 big money dates in boxing. There's Cinco de Mayo, May 5th weekend, and there's September. There's the second week, the weekend that's the second week in September. That is, generally speaking, when the biggest fights in boxing happen, right around those 2 time frames. And that's why Floyd Mayweather always fought in May 5th, like the Cinco de Mayo weekend, and September 16th. You're not competing with the Super Bowl. You're not competing with the World Series. You're not competing with, the NBA playoffs. That's like, those are the 2 sweet spots in boxing, September and May. Heavyweights have been doing pretty good in November as well. But those are the 2 dates. So pretty much it's just like they pause it. And I think this is a smart move for Canelo Alvarez to say, look, we're going to end all suspense. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to withdraw from the fight, because right there, he's also giving himself, a bit of laying himself at the, to the mercy of the court, right? Where he says, look, I know more than likely you're going to suspend me. So what I'll do is I'll make it easy on you, and nobody has to say that the fight's canceled. I'll just withdraw from it. I'll cooperate with whatever you say. I'll pay I'll pay the fee. Once I pay the fee, if you could backdate my punishment to the date of the first test, then I can be up and ready to go for September. Now, what that means for people that were looking to step in for Gennady Golovkin is, don't expect it to be anybody difficult at all. Don't expect a Demetrius Andrade bout. Don't expect a Jermall Charlo bout. Don't expect a Danny Jacobs bout. Don't expect a Billy Joe Saunders bout. Don't expect a bout against anybody that has a reasonable chance of beating Gennady Golovkin. I do not buy that Gennady Golovkin's scared. I do agree with what the article said in that Golovkin never hurt him. So I don't understand why he would be scared. That's probably just a reflex kind of nasty attitude that Canelo has, because Canelo, it's got to been a frustrating couple weeks. But, pretty much what our thoughts are is, that this is going to wrap up where we get to see this fight in September. And then we'll be back, and hopefully we'll be able to focus on Abel Sanchez saying something stupid. And with that, I'm out.